Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to be making platforms and terrains for the player to jump up on. We're going to work on one-way platforms, and we're going to work on solid terrains where the player can't walk through them. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go into the sprites folder and we're going to delete these tiles because I have an updated one that I'm going to import here. Just going to drag this into the sprites folder, and there's my updated tiles. Okay, and at this point I actually saved and exited Godot and restarted because I wanted to have the new tiles. If we click on tile map up here and go to tile set, you'll see that now we have some new tiles, but I don't think it updates automatically. I think you have to exit and restart. The other option is just to delete what you had and sort of start over, but I thought this would be a little bit better because that way we get to keep the tiles we had. And the new tiles are pretty much the same as the old ones, but the coloring is a little bit darker. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually have sort of a foreground background tile situation where we'll have one-way platforms that you can jump through but stand on. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we actually need to create tiles for these new tiles down here. So it says hold control to create multiple tiles. That's exactly what we'll do. Make sure you're on tile set and not on tile map. I sometimes get confused with that. So back to tile set, we're on setup. We're going to hold control and create multiple tiles. So we'll do 2 selection boxes and that'll create all the tiles we need. And now we've got all these tiles, and you can tell these are slightly darker. It's not super noticeable, but in the game it'll look different enough, I think. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into select mode here. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger and zoom in a bit. So in our case, I'm going to select this tile. I'm going to go down to physics, because we're going to have to actually change the physics on these tiles. Now, you'll have to decide which ones you want to be the one-way tiles and which ones you want to be the solid ground. Personally, I'm going to make the darker ones the solid ground and the lighter ones the one-way tiles, which means we're going to have to actually change the physics on the tiles we made here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on snapping here to make it a little bit easier. We're going to go into grid snap, and now I'm going to move these little nodes to make the physics just that that grassy part on the tile. You can see the blue box has changed to what I wanted to be there. And now we want to do the same thing for these other tiles. And actually, I think what we can do is, I think we can do multiple tiles at once. Let's see. Because we want all these grassy ones to basically have that same physics. And yeah, you can see you can actually change the physics on all of those at once. And what we're going to do with these other ones, we're going to select them. I'm using Shift to select multiple tiles, by the way. Actually, you can drag as well. There we go. So all these other tiles for the one-way platforms are actually going to have no physics. So we're just going to clear it. You can use C, or you can press on the 3 dots and hit clear. And now these have no physics at all. So that means we'll be able to walk right through them. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is actually, we could have done this all in one step, but we're going to hold down Shift. We're going to select the tiles that we want. So all the ones with the little grassy top that we have that collider on now. And we're going to go down here into Polygon 0 under Physics Layer 0. And we're going to check one way. So now these will be one-way platforms, all 8 of these. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up these tiles with the same physics that these ones used to have. So it should be pretty easy. We're just going to click on all the tiles. We're just going to hold down Shift and drag in order to select all of the tiles here, since they're all the same shape. And then we're going to have all of these selected. And once we have all of those selected, we're just going to go into the 3 dots and we're going to do default tile shape. And now they have a basic square tile shape, which is what we had on the other ones before. And we're going to make sure that one way is not clicked. Okay, now that we've got all the physics done for both of the tiles, what we're going to do is actually create terrains. Now, terrains in Godot are basically auto tiles where you'll start painting a tile and it'll automatically paint the tiles that should be adjacent to it based on some sort of logic. So to do that, we're going to go up here into the tile set. So you'll have to, if you don't have it selected, you'll have to select the tile map up in the scene view. And then in the inspector, we'll open up tile set. And we don't need physics layers right now. I'm just gonna close that. We need terrain sets. We're gonna add an element. And we're gonna do match corners and sides, which is the default. And then under here, we're gonna have terrains. We're gonna add another element here. We're actually gonna add 2. So we'll have 2 since we have 2 sets that we want to be sort of independent of each other. The first one I'm gonna call one-way ground. I'm using an underscore convention there. And then the second one I'm going to call ground. So this first set will refer to this top part, and this second set will refer to this bottom set of tiles. And you can choose a color. This isn't really important or anything. It's just to denote it when you paint it on here. So you can tell them apart from each other. I'm going to choose sort of a green for this one. Let's see. Sort of a dark green. And this one can stay as is. And now we've got 2 terrain sets made. What we can do is we can actually click on tiles, just like we were doing for the physics, but I'm gonna close out the physics. And we've also got a terrains drop down here. And you can see it's got some information on the terrains, but I actually find it a lot easier to just go into paint. And up here in paint properties, you'll be able to change from physics layer to terrains. And here we go. So now that we're in the terrains painting options, we're going to select the terrain set we want. This is terrain set 0. The terrain set is what holds the 2 terrains we just made. So both the one-way ground and the ground are under the same terrain set 0. So don't panic if you don't see both your terrains here yet. You click that and then you choose a terrain. We'll do one at a time. First we'll do one-way ground. And what you'll do is you'll want to set up the logic for this. And basically what you're doing, you'll click on a tile and that'll let you paint. Now, depending on your tile set, this can get pretty complicated. But in our case, it's actually pretty simple. What we'll be doing is filling in where a tile should be touching another tile. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this tile. I'm going to say, where does this tile fit in with the other tiles? So this is a top left corner. So that means that this top left section of the tile is not going to have any other tiles next to it. So I'm going to paint the areas where the tile is going to be touching other tiles. So I'm kind of just saying there's going to be a tile diagonally from this one, there's going to be a tile to the right, and there's going to be a tile down. That's what that painting is denoting. Now, depending on your tile set and on how you want your terrain logic to work, this may differ, especially if you're doing something like a top-down game. It may work a little bit differently there. So this isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution. Now we're going to click on this one, and this one we're going to want touching the top and the bottom, but also in here and diagonally. So we got all of those colored in, and this one's going to be the opposite of that top one, and this one's going to be sort of like this one but turned around. And we're just going to go through and do this. If you're still a little bit confused about terrains and how this works, I recommend checking out some other YouTube tutorials. I'll link one down in the description that I thought was really helpful. For this one, we're just going to draw a line down because it's not going to be touching anything on the outsides there, just up and down. For this set of 4 tiles, I actually want to do sort of the opposite of what we did for the first ones, where we've got kind of a hole in the middle, because they're there to show when a tile it gets cut off there. So we'll fill in all of the outsides. Okay, and for these are going to be basically the opposite of this. So they'll just be sideways. And this one is just a singular tile. So if you paint just one, that's what you'll get. So now that we have that done, we'll do the bottom set in a second. It's actually going to look exactly the same. We just need to do it under the ground terrain. But if I go to tile map now, and instead of painting individual tiles like we were doing, where, for example, when you're painting individual tiles, you might have to do, if you want a corner tile, you have to paint that one, and then you go in here and paint this one, and then you go and you paint that, and then you want to paint this, and so you're kind of picking each tile individually. So that can be pretty slow when you're building out an entire level. So now we have a tab for terrains here, And we haven't built the ground terrain yet, so there's nothing here, but the one-way ground is all set up. And you just have to click on one-way ground and pick your paint tool of choice. And now what you can do is you can actually paint, and it'll use logic to decide what tile to place based on the terrain painting that we just did. So as you can see, this is working just fine. Because of the tile set that I made, there are a few limitations to what this can do. For example, making a really thin twisting tile is not really covered under this tile set. I don't have enough tiles to do that. So for some of them, you might have to make them a little bit thicker so that they look right. But if you're making it like 2 tiles thick, it should mostly work. The thicker you make it, the better it'll work. This is just kind of a simple tile set, but if you have a more sophisticated one with more tiles for different situations, this will work even better. And sometimes you need to double click a tile because maybe it hasn't updated right. But yeah, you can see this is working. This is going to make building out a level much easier. It even works with the other tools like the square tool and the line tool. Again, some of them are just not quite thick enough, so there we go. But yeah, we can still use those single tiles for creating simple platforms, and you can use individual tiles. So yeah, this is going to be great. And the ground is going to be the same thing. We're going to go and do that. So we're going to go back into here under paint, under tile set paint, and then hit terrain ground. And we're going to be painting these tiles now with the ground. And it's going to look exactly the same as this, so I'm just going to speed through it. Okay, so now we have both terrains painted, and they refer to different types of terrains here. So if we go back to tile map, you'll see that we've got one-way ground and ground filled in with the appropriate tiles now. And you'll also see back in tile set that the colors that we chose up here match the ones down here. So that's the only thing that those colors do there. It doesn't change the actual color of the tile, it's just for visual reference. So now we're going to explore what we can do with this. Okay, now this has turned into a bit of a mess, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into Tile Map, and we're going to click on the Rect tool and on the eraser, and I'm just going to erase all of this. And now we're going to go into Terrains, and we want to paint just the regular ground, turn off eraser mode. And what I'll do is I'll just make a basic ground here, the player to walk on, with maybe like a couple spots here where I need to jump up and jump down. Let's actually make it kind of steps. And then we're going to go to one-way ground. And what I want to do here is make a little bit of a platform up here that hopefully the player can jump up on. We may need to change the jump height of the player. I'm not sure if he'll be able to make that jump, but let's try this out. So now that we've got that set up, we're just going to hit play. And the ground down here is working. You can see it's got physics, and I can't walk through it. It stops me. So, but then this one, you can see I'm kind of going through it, but unfortunately my jump height is just not high enough. So let's move this to the side a little bit and go into player. And we're going to put jump power. I'm actually going to lower speed as well. It feels a little quick. I'm just going to do 4 on speed. Jump power up to 12, mostly for testing purposes here. And yeah, that feels a little bit better. And there we go. So we can jump right through it. You can see you can walk on it, and you can fall off and jump up on top of these. But yeah, that's working just fine. So let's keep going with this. Okay, now let's rebuild this level layout a little bit. I'm going to go into the eraser mode here from the Terrains tab and remove a bunch of these tiles. So now that we have a flat ground, I'm going to go into the one-way platforms, and I'm going to want to make a one-way platform that sort of is kind of in the background there. But as you can see, one of the issues is it doesn't connect to this one because they're technically different terrains. And if I paint over it, it kind of cuts out the regular ground terrain. Now it should still work, but that's not really the aesthetic that I'm looking for there. I kind of want this ground terrain to come all the way up, but not get cut off here where you can see the gap between them. So the way we're going to resolve that is by using terrain layers. Now that is different from the terrain sets and the physics layers from here. We can actually close out the tile set here for now. We don't need it right now. And there is another section down here called layers. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to make 2 layers here. The first layer here I'm going to name one-way ground, much like our other ones. And the second one is going to be ground. And actually, these don't need to match the layers up here. Let me pull these up again. Terrain sets. I called these the same thing, but they don't actually need to match. Depending on what you're doing, it may be better to have them not match. In our case, it's fine for now. You can always change it later. We're going to make sure they're both enabled. And we do want the one-way ground on the top here because it's going to draw them in that order. And in our case, I want the ground to be sort of more of a foreground layer and this one to be more of a background layer. And you'll see what that does in a second here. Let's go back to tile map. And what I'm going to do is actually, once again, just kind of delete all of this. I'm going to select a terrain just because you need to have one selected in order to draw or erase. So let's erase all of that. And now here, we can actually choose what layer we want to draw on. So in our case, I want to draw on ground first. And that doesn't have to match this. I can technically draw one-way ground. If I remember to turn off the eraser, I can draw one-way ground on the ground layer, which is a little confusing, but we don't want to do that. We want to draw some ground here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a big chunk of ground right here. And now I'm going to switch layers to one-way ground. And you can see it kind of made this transparent because it's showing me that I'm on a different layer now. I'm going to draw some one-way ground right here. Let's draw it like that, and then like that, and then like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to draw it on the background, but my player will still be able to interact with it just fine. Now you can switch layers here, and you can see that one kind of became a little transparent because now we switched to a different layer. And that's how you sort of navigate the painting layers of the terrain. Now I'm going to hit play. And this should be the result I want. You can see it goes all the way down where it looks like it's a little bit in the background. I can walk in front of it, but I can still jump up on it and I can jump through it because it's a one-way platform. And that's exactly the result we wanted there. So that's how you do sort of multiple layers. Now it can be a little bit more work managing both layers of the terrains here because you kind of have to remember to switch them and you might need to figure out, well, I want this particular tile set in this layer, or this one's more of a foreground or background, but you'll get used to working like that and it'll give your levels a much more complex feel to them. And the last thing we're going to do is I'm actually just going to go through and build a level real quick. I'm going to speed through the process. You can build your level however you want, or you can copy the one I make once it's done. So yeah, I'm just going to build a quick level and I'll show you when it's done. Okay, this is the level I blocked out. Let's try it out. So now if we hit play, we've got sort of a barrier on the left side here that we can't walk through. And we can go over here and we still got this platform that we can kind of jump up and test out the one-way platforms. This is why I added the 2 types of tiles. You can use the same one technically, but I like that this one kind of stands out from this one. So I think immediately the player will think, oh, this is a little bit different. And then we've got a big drop right here. And then there's like a little nook right here. Maybe you can put like a player pickup or a special item there. Got a couple steps here in the background tile. And then we've got this area here, which actually I'm seeing, again, one of those limitations of my tile set is doing those thin tiles. I'll need to make that one too thick. And you can jump up on these platforms here and get up to the top of here and kind of go in here. And again, this one kind of is solid. You got a little bit of a tunnel and then that's it. So we'll be adding more to this level and changing it as we progress with the game. But this is pretty good. I think this is a great spot to leave it for this episode. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're excited about... Oh, I can't get back over there, huh? I hope you're excited about where this is going. I'm really happy with how this game is progressing, and I hope it's helpful. So if you liked the video, let me know by hitting the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more of these kinds of videos. Of course, a big special thanks to all of my Patreons. Your support means a lot to me. And if you want to become a supporter, check the links down in the description to my Patreon and my Ko-fi. And as always, thank you so much for watching.